Hello and welcome to another Writerly Witterings, but today it's not about pens and paper. Today, at last, I'm getting around to talking about this. Why am I talking about this? Because it was a present given to me some years ago and it's interesting, that's why. Now, if you haven't had a fob watch, a pocket watch like this in your hand, this is quite an elderly one. It's certainly mid-1800s, I would think. And you can tell that because there's no winding knob on here. That was a later invention. With this, you needed a key. And basically on the back, which is beautifully patterned, there's an opening door. And when you press the top, the opening door opens. And there is a keyhole. Isn't that clever? So you just stick the key into the thing, turn it a few times, and you've got a wound up watch. But what I like about this is an old-fashioned farmer's watch. Plain white enamel dial, fairly chunky size, as you can see there. If I just focus that in there, fairly chunky. It's not slim and lightweight. Whereas this one is quite slim, and it's a much more elegant design, as you can see. If I hide myself behind it, that's better. You can see there the machine engraving, which is absolutely beautifully done. And again, press the button on the top and you've got access to the back. Now, what's interesting about these things is the number of marks that they have on the back, because there's little scratchings and engravings all the way around there. And this one, for example, says 54W, it has 3014D, 6711D, 8-99, 43-54. Now, what gets me is that I would, as the owner of a watch, be really pissed off if some flaming watch mender made little scratch marks on it. Now, according to Sherlock Holmes, in one of his stories, and I can't remember which one offhand, but the sight of the back of the watch is an indication of the character of the person. So, for example, if there's a whole bunch of scratch marks around the winding mechanism, those scratches probably indicate the guy was drunk because he had wind up his watch every night before he went to bed, and if he'd had a few winds, too many, he'd missed the hole and scratched the silver. He also said that a lot of these marks on the inside were from pawnbrokers, so it indicated that the owner of the watch had fallen on hard times every now and again. I don't know what all these numbers and so on mean. What I do know is that it's a lovely little watch though. Now, with all these watches, if you just stick your nail in and pull, the front glass opens up. Why would you want that? Well, first, you can see that the absolute centre is a little square nut, and the key fits that. That's how you change the time. You put the key on the nut, turn it round, takes a bit of time, but it's how you change the time setting. What's also interesting is that down here at the bottom, if it'll focus, you can just see it there, yes. The hand is actually pointing to it. There's a little lug. That's spring-loaded. And if you push that in with a nail or something similar, you can open up the whole mechanism. Here's the whole mechanism. You see there's a little metal bar here. If you just turn that round, it releases the back case, and then you can see the whole of the glorious mechanism working away like Billy-O. Now, What you won't be able to see too clearly there, but I'll put it up as a photo, is that it's got J. Rihle, R-I-H, looks like double L-E. And apparently he was a watchmaker in Morton Hampstead, because it says Morton Hampstead around the top there. And this is interesting because, as I understand it, Mr. Rihle came to Morton Hampstead not out of choice originally, but he arrived as a prisoner during the Napoleonic Wars, because Dartmoor Prison was originally built in the early 1800s as a prison for Napoleonic soldiers who had been found, captured, and they were brought here so they couldn't go back fighting for Napoleon again. So it was a prisoner of war camp, and Mr. Rihle came there, and he apparently hated Dartmoor so much he decided to live there forever. So he set up shop in Morton Hampstead as a watchmaker and started making these lovely little devices. Now, that's the story I was told when I was persuaded to persuade my wife to buy this watch for me back in 1996, 97. That's how long I've had it. I don't really care about whether the story is absolutely 100% correct. I still love the watch, and it's still going, it still works now. And I do love fob watches. However, this one is subtly different. This one is, well, apart from anything else, I think it's absolutely beautiful. I really love that machined engraving all over the front. It works in exactly the same way. You can pull the front off, have a look at the mechanism inside. The trouble with this one is, of course, that it's not going. Why doesn't it go? Well, because this is a delightful watch. Which is as old as the other one, early 1800s, I think, to mid 1800s, and it works on a mechanism known as a Fusee mechanism. Because the trouble is, if you've got a clockwork device, trying to make sure the clockwork device releases its energy at the same rate all the time is not so easy, because if you've got a drum and you've got a chain or something round it and there's a clockwork mechanism, the chain's going to go round the drum and over itself. If you imagine a piece of string going on a reel, then the string on the outside of the reel, if you've got the centre there, the string on the outside of the reel is going to turn that drum quite slowly. But as you get closer in, the drum will be turning faster, because now, one of the things that used to make these work was the Fusee chain. This one's chain is broken. If you want to know what a Fusee chain is, I can only suggest you Google it, because I've tried to explain it 4 times now on this, and I've failed abjectly. So I would suggest you look up Fusee, F-U-S-E-E, and that's what this needs, but unfortunately it's broken, and trying to find a Fusee chain now is not so easy. Oddly enough, I mentioned to someone on YouTube a couple of days ago that I was going to make this video, and mentioned Fusee chains and this particular watch, and he said, did I know that apparently a lot of fob watches were broken up in the Second World War because the Fusee chains were needed to make altimeters and so on for the Air Force? No, I didn't. Did I also know, he went on, that a lot of the time the people who made these chains had to be small, nimble, with good fingers and so on, and so they tended to be very young girls, as in sort of 8 years old. No, I didn't know that either, but interesting little fact. Sort of thing that might come up in a pub quiz, you never know. So for now, this watch is not usable. Why does it matter to me? Well, because this was one of my grandfather's watches, or great-grandfather's watches. So it's got a sort of sentimental value to me, but the main thing really is I just love that watch face. I think it's absolutely beautiful. The machining, the engraving on it is fabulous. And somehow the numbers all stand out. They seem to be slightly more yellow than the silver background. I can only assume that they possibly put a little bit of gilt on the numbers or something to make them stand out. Possibly, I don't know. But I love that watch. It's got family sentimental value. I also love this watch because my wife bought it for me. That makes it special. And it's nice because it's a simple, old-fashioned, unadorned farmer's type of watch. It's solid, as it's demonstrated by the fact it's still going now. That has sentimental value too. And I like my Rolex, but I like wearing waistcoats, and if you're wearing a waistcoat it seems a shame not to have a fob watch. That's what I think. So there you have it. Two fob watches that I really like. One of them I can wear for looks. One of them I can wear because it works. Good idea to have watches that work, I find. Hopefully that was interesting. And now, very briefly, hopefully next week I will have some more pens to look at, because I think that there could be some Conway Stewarts on their way. That'll be fun. I might also talk a little bit about other journaling type things, because we're still in lockdown and it's likely we're going to be in lockdown for quite a time, I think. We may be allowed out a bit more, but not that much. So I thought it might be interesting to look at other types of creative thing you can do. Writing, of course, is one creative thing. I've got a friend, Andy Costello, who some years ago started writing his autobiography. Very interesting guy. He used to be a policeman, then he became a criminal. Interesting character. But I kept in touch with him every now and again because he contacted me and asked me to ghostwrite a book for him. And the trouble is that basically publishers won't give advances to people who they don't know. And an ex-policeman who turned into a bit of a criminal, that's not the sort of story they normally go for, unless you're a really famous criminal, in which case they will. But there's no way of telling that an ordinary ex-bobby can actually write. So I couldn't find any publisher that was even remotely interested in his work. But because of the lockdown, he finished off writing his autobiography on his own. And he sent it to me last week and said, would I just have a quick once-over for him? And I picked it up yesterday, day before yesterday, read 30 pages the first night, and I was blown away by the first 30 pages. Read the remainder of it yesterday. There's 107,000 words, so it's about the same size as a Fred Forsyth book. Fairly thick. But it's hugely well written, wonderfully entertaining, lots of bits of great humour, but humanity just flows through it. It's quite a humbling book to read, quite astonishing. So I'm going to send that off to my agent, hopefully, if he agrees, and I'm going to see if that might end up in a publishing house. You never know. Be good if it could. Apart from that, there's not a lot else to say, apart from the fact that I'm really looking forward to getting on with this cup of tea. I hope at some point to be able to get out and do some painting. And I've got to get back to the work now. I've got a short story to write. Another one. Yeah, tough like that, isn't it? Thanks a lot for watching. Hope that was interesting. A bit different, but you know, if you like pens, then you probably like the precision of watches too. These things sort of go together, don't they? Thanks very much for watching. Take care. If you'd like to help support the channel, go to the link on the Patreon at the bottom, then well, you know, you can subscribe it, like it, share it, add comments. I'll respond when I can. And apart from that, I'll see you in a week's time. Cheers, take care. Run along, go. You can see the logic, I hope. Now, one of the ways that they had to get around that with pocket watches was they designed a Fusee chain, and that meant that instead of sitting on a drum so that the